Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We have a special service this morning with a special annual guest, a service timed in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day tomorrow, which for the first time has received a proclamation from the President of the United States. It begins, "Since time immemorial, American Indians, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians have built vibrant and diverse cultures, safeguarding land, language, spirit, knowledge, and tradition across the generations. On Indigenous Peoples Day, our nation celebrates the invaluable contributions and resilience of Indigenous peoples, recognizes their inherent sovereignty, and commits to honoring the federal government's trust and treaty obligations to tribal nations. For generations, federal policies systemically sought to assimilate and displace Native people and eradicate Native cultures. Today, we recognize Indigenous peoples' resilience and strength, as well as the immeasurable positive impact that they have made on every aspect of American society." And the proclamation goes on. I encourage you to find it and read it. It is with that desire, both to celebrate the extraordinary resilience of Indigenous people and to acknowledge and address spiritually and concretely the painful legacy of our nation's treatment of Indigenous people, that we enter this service this morning and receive the great blessing of Shelly Covert's presence, spokesperson for the local Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe, on her birthday, no less. So happy birthday, Shelly. Thank you for being here. I invite Shelly to come to bless us into this time together and to bless us into this shared conversation about relationship and embodying cultivating relationship. Shelly.
Homakini, everyone. AUU Vietnam, AUU Vietnam, AUU Vietnam, AUU Vietnam, AUU Pineta Estumiani Miamenan. Leu-io, 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 AUU Vietnam, AUU Vietnam, AUU Vietnam, AUU Vietnam, AUU Pineta Estumiani Miamenan. Leu-io, 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 AUU Vietnam, AUU Vietnam. Thank you, Kevin. Hey, everybody. Yeah, it's another birthday. 38 again. First, my mother wanted to say hello to everybody. So she appreciates the inclusion in a different way than I do, because I think their generation had it so much harder than I do. And so she wanted to make sure I said hi to everyone. And thank you so much. This topic is so incredibly important. Thank you for reading that proclamation. I didn't even know about that. So thank you, and we'll be talking more pretty soon.
Good morning. We acknowledge the Nisenan people are still here amongst us today. Though they are nearly invisible, their story continues to be excluded from history. We understand we are on Nisenan land that was never ceded, and the original tribal families have yet to recover from the near genocide of their people. As a resident or visitor in Nisenan land, we support the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe in efforts to stabilize their people, as well as a campaign to restore their tribal sovereignty through federal recognition.
And with Shelly's song and voice, the song from her heritage and her own voice still ringing in our hearts and minds, we express through a song from our own tradition our desire, our intention, our promise to live our values and to build a nobler world than we have known. I invite you to join in the singing and to let the words come from your heart.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one, and now we join each other, show for all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which bends our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Hi, I'm Jeff Stone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community of the Mountains. The theme this month is Cultivating Relationships. Today, we look at cultivating relationships between groups of people. In particular, we will be looking at the relationship of our religious community to the people native to the land which we call home. The Nisenan have called this area home for thousands of years. Every week, we read what we call the land acknowledgement, as we did today, where we acknowledge that this is indeed the home of the Nisenan people. How do we relate to a people who are almost wiped out by the ancestors of many of us, and who are now struggling for the federal recognition for which the Nisenan once negotiated, and that was then denied them? To be in right relations to the land, to all people, and to ourselves, we must also acknowledge our relation to the people from which we sprang. There may be much to be grateful for, but there is also the pain of knowing the wrongness of what our forebears did to other human beings, and to the land itself, to the forest that once grew on it, to the animals that once thrived here. What are we to make of all this? What are we to do? I welcome you here to consider these questions and to listen with both your head and your heart to representatives of the Nisenan themselves and to some of us who have devoted themselves to these questions. I hope that you will leave this service with a better understanding of our relationship to the Nisenan and why that matters.
Our chalice lighting today comes from Laura Bogle, This is our home, but not just ours. This is our home, but not just ours. We light our chalice, remembering that this is our home, but not first ours and not just ours. This land we live on, this water we drink, the air we breathe, these old mountains that hold us steady to our ground, these forests that give us their healing green, these flowers that give us their beauty and fragrance, these fields that give us our daily bread, these stars that show us our place, and the wilderness and the tame backyards, all of it our home. With the lighting of this chalice, we remember the ancestors who have lived on this land and who have shaped it. The Nisenan, the prospectors, the settlers, the mountaineers, the miners, the farmers, the hunters, the immigrants, the artists, the families, the explorers, the business people, the engineers, the builders, the scientists, the teachers, the workers, the leaders. We inherit their choices. With the lighting of this chalice, we honor the animals and the creatures who have made their home in this land, the ones here now and the ones who used to be. We envision the future generations who will live on this land and let their voices fill our hearts. We light our chalice to remember that this is our home, but not first ours, and not just ours, and not always ours.
Usually, the opening words in the service are spoken. They are meant to be not only words that open up the service, but also words that open us up. Cheryl Morris discovered today's opening words online, sung words, and recognized that this particular singing would open us up. I invite Shelly to tell us more about what we will hear and experience, that we might best take it to heart. Shelly.
What you will hear is, this is my great uncle, Dan Rose, and he's singing a traditional cry song. We cremated our people, and we had very strict mourning protocols. The women would shear their hair with the hot coals down to the scalp, and then they would use pine pitch and the ashes from the burning pit, and they would wear it on their hair and on their chest and on their faces until it wore off, and also on the children of the past. And so you can hear my Uncle Dan singing, you can hear the sorrow in his voice, and toward the end you will also hear him, he changes his voice and he lifts us back up. And when I hear him sing, I can't help but cry. It's just so beautiful and so moving. But then at the end, he brings us up out of that. So knowing when to cry and when to come up out of it, so we don't stay down there. So thank you.
Oh, hello to you, the boy. Hello, can do you can hello,
So I wanted to talk a little bit about why it's so important for the cultivating of relationship with the tribe, with the community. It's so funny because it was so absent for so long that we were so completely erased here that I'm just joyous sometimes when someone reaches out and can find we have a website and we have social media, and I think my phone number is all over the internet. But we're visible in at least a small way, and that comes at no. There's been no ease to that. Boy, it's a big topic. I thought I knew exactly what I was going to say, but I'm really being moved to say something else, so I will do that. The work has been on the part of the tribe, and there have been, it started with the broken treaty of 1851, or the non-ratified treaty of 1851, and then we move right into the federal recognition by President Woodrow Wilson, and then the tribe was terminated. And I mean, there are just so many moments in time that I wish I could just plug you all into my head and share what I know, because I don't always express it well. But the re-emergence, I guess you could say it is, the visibility of the tribe has really been hard. And I always think it's like Coyote, or the big cosmic joke, or the humor of the universe, or whatever, or if it was myself challenging myself to, I'll bet you can't do this in this lifetime, like we're gonna stack it up and stack it up and stack it up, and then the end of the joke being, and you're going to fix it all. The same people who, were kind of destroyed by everything. And if you can understand that and feel kind of the weight of that, and I'm not trying to, play my fiddle today or anything, but feeling the weight of that, I think on the juxtaposition is when there is support, and when there is understanding, and there is when there is reaching out toward us. Or the analogy I've been using lately is like you're carrying a huge big load of firewood, or a huge bundle of sticks or something, and somebody takes one, and then somebody else takes one, and pretty soon we're all carrying something that's pretty light. And that's how I've been feeling lately, and I don't know if it's just getting older. And, there's not a lot of, the tribe isn't bitter. The tribe isn't, blamey. And we've had some reactions to the land acknowledgement from some people where I think it stokes a fear in people. Like, they think we're going to come back and, try to take all the land back or something if we get federally recognized. And I saw one of my Native, colleagues or whatever on the internet, probably on Facebook, too much Facebook, but she was saying that, people may be afraid because they fear that what was done to the Indians, they're going to turn around and do back, to American citizens or something like that. But she had said, that's just not who we are. And It's true. So in that relationship building, we all have something to offer. You know, if I can help people when they need help, that's what I do. And I think the building of friendship and the relationship building is just so important. Is this supposed to be my word for wisdom? Am I even doing what I'm supposed to be doing? So in all of that, another piece that has been just kind of invading my whole person lately. When I say we respect the land and we respect the animals and we steward the earth, I keep feeling like I couldn't identify it. I keep going, it's something I just can't can't grab it, you know? And then I was listening to some of the old creation stories of a lot of tribes throughout Northern California. And what I realized is, you know, the creator, coyote, usually coyote's always there, and then the first person, they were the first three that sort of put everything, you know, into being. And then the animals, I think it's mostly because they took pity on humans, because we don't have fur, we don't have claws, we don't have the fangs, we don't have the good smell, the good hearing, or the good sight like animals do. And maybe we don't have those innate, whatever that is, instincts that animals do to survive in the same way. But all of our gifts usually come from the animals in some way. And so it had reminded me that we're in constant thanks. Like, it was given to us, you know, the animals gave us fire, and we promised to always take care of it, and we're in constant thanks to those beings for sharing that with us and making an easier life for humans on the earth. And I think that's super important. And we may believe it in a way deeper way about how the earth was created and where we go when we die. But that thanks to the earth is so much deeper than just stewarding and oh, you know, animals are good, don't hurt them, or whatever. It's like this deep reverence. And same with the water spirits and the air and the earth. So I think it's just a completely, like, it's so many levels deeper. And every generation we get out from the ancestors who lived that life, I feel, you know, we can look around and go, ooh, you know, that's why. What were the condors in charge of? What was the grizzly in charge of here? What were the great antelope and elk herds in charge of here? What was their mandate to do on the earth, and how did they take care of their piece? And so, you know, there you go, relationship building. We wouldn't have fire if it hadn't been for, you know, a certain bird taking pity on us, I guess. So, but yeah, I think that's my words of wisdom. Like, how can we tap back into that and see the planet and everything here, that humans just weren't always the top of the food chain, and that maybe we shouldn't be necessarily. But to reflect on that was my thoughts of wisdom to share, if that's wise to you all at all.
Shelly, thank you. That is wonderful wisdom. That invitation to increase our own continual gratitude, and also to understand our relationships as deeper than they are now, wherever we're starting from. That's a possibility. Thank you. Thank you. You may realize that tomorrow has, for a long time, been celebrated as Columbus Day in the United States. Although since the early 1990s, more and more cities and states have turned to celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day instead, recognizing that Columbus's actions and behaviors set in motion a legacy of genocide and slavery, a history of trauma for Native people. Despite our nation's foundational origin story, our nation's creation story, claiming that Columbus discovered America, Cristobal Colon never set foot on this continent in any of his 4 trips to this hemisphere. When he first made landfall in the Bahamas, however, he noticed that the friendly Arawak people who greeted him were wearing small bits of gold jewelry, triggering a bloodlust so extreme, writes Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, that the historical record, while clear, is difficult to comprehend. As soon as I arrived, Columbus himself wrote later, I took some of the natives by force. In his 4 trips, he is thought to have enslaved 5,000 indigenous people, more than any other individual ever. So, here we are, coming to terms with the origin story that has defined and shaped this nation. The thing is, it is indeed an origin story that has defined and shaped the United States, just not in the way that our school books and our Columbus Day celebrations have portrayed. What has truly shaped this nation are the parts of the story that are not typically told. That so much of this founding behavior in question was driven by a lust for gold is ringing powerfully in my heart and spirit this year. Here, right here in Grass Valley and Nevada City and Nevada County, in the Sierra foothills, where the gold rush 300 years later led to parallel brutality, terror, attempted genocide. I name all this in this moment to acknowledge that we are in the midst of wrestling with that entire complex set of local and national legacies, needing to face it, to confront it, to heal it, to transform it if we can, including by recognizing and honoring the powerful resilience of peoples like the Nisenan here. As you search your heart this morning in the quiet and in the music, for the unique and personal joys and sorrows that move there, remember that our individual connections and cares unfold within lives and stories anchored in paths far out of our sight and that reach into futures we cannot know. May it help us remember that our lives enter a stream already in motion and only for a time. If you would like to share a joy or a sorrow that surfaces today in your heart via the chat, please do so that we might be witnesses to what you are holding and witnesses to your journey, and that we might help hold your burdens and multiply your joy. I invite you into the search of your heart and invite you to hold each other in the quiet, in the music, in your own prayerfulness. Jeff has lit a candle. We've been lighting a candle each week to honor the losses around COVID. Well over 700,000 now, 99 deaths in this county. Invite us to remember all those ripples outward and reach out as we can to the people who are suffering from those losses. And I remind us always that there's so much more that we don't know, that we will never type into a chat, that we may never hear from someone, that we may never speak aloud. It all stirs within us, we carry it with us, it affects how we are in the world and with each other. And so invites always our compassion, our deep compassion, knowing that we never truly know what's true for someone else. I invite you into a time of prayer and meditation, a time to hold your own heart and to hold one another. Spirit of life and love, of all that is holy, of all that matters, come to us now, in this day, in this moment. Sing in our hearts all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind of our turbulent and troubled thoughts. Rise in the sea of our welling grief and anger, and our passion and our joy. Move through these hands, these hands, these hands, to give life, life right here, the shape of justice. Roots hold us close that we might remember and be fed in the end by all of it. Wings of what we know can be. Set us free. Spirit of life and love, of all that is holy, of all that matters, all that is so near. Come, please come to us.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Spirit of life, stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning. I taught federal Indian law for a few years at UC Davis Law School in the mid-1990s. One class gave me a book as a thank you gift at the end of the semester, American Holocaust, Columbus and the Conquest of the New World, by David Stannard, a professor of American Studies at the University of Hawaii. Professor Stannard observed that, quote, some Indians who in the late 1840s had been driven into the mountains by marauding slave catchers were thereby forced to poach on white-owned livestock for their existence. As a result, Professor Stannard writes, California's first governor, Peter Burnett, in his State of the State speech to the legislature in 1851, quote, announced the necessity for a total eradication of the natives. Barnett quotes the governor, the white man to whom time is money and who labors hard all day to create the comforts of life cannot sit up all night to watch his property. After being robbed a few times, he becomes desperate and resolves upon a war of extermination. Professor Stannard continues, between 1852 and 1860, the indigenous population of California plunged from 85,000 to 35,000, a collapse of about 60% within 8 years of the first governor's demands for the Indians' destruction. By 1890, that number was halved again. Now 80% of the natives who had been alive when California became a state had been wiped out by an official policy of genocide. Fewer than 18,000 California Indians were still living, and the number was continuing to drop. As had happened in Virginia 200 years earlier, and has happened across the entire continent during the intervening years, between 95 and 98% of California Indians had been exterminated in little more than a century. What kind of people, Professor Barnett asks, do such horrible things? His answer, Christians. Examining historic European Christian attitudes towards race and war, he finds the ground to have been well prepared by the end of the Middle Ages for the centuries-long genocide campaign the Europeans and their descendants launched against indigenous people in the New World. He connects those same sources to the architects of the Nazi Holocaust and argues that this ideology lives on, surfacing among other places in U.S. justifications for large-scale military intervention in Southeast Asia and the Middle East. The members of the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe today are survivors of this genocide. I am so proud to be a member of UUCM as we seek to cultivate respectful and right relations with the tribe. The tribe has received recognition and support from the Nevada City Council, the Nevada County Board of Supervisors, the Nevada Historical Society, UUCM, and many, many other local businesses, organizations, and individuals. The tribe has applied to the California Native American Heritage Commission for listing under state law, and we're optimistic about that petition being granted. The next crucial step for the tribe from a legal point of view is to seek restoration of its federal recognition. As Shelly mentioned, the tribe was federally recognized in 1913 by executive order of President Woodrow Wilson and was illegally terminated from federal recognition in 1964 under a 1958 congressional statute, California Rancheria Retermination Act. Federal recognition would correct this historical injustice and would open a whole universe of opportunities and meaningful benefits for the tribe and its members. And Shelly and I think are going to talk about that in a minute. It would make the tribe eligible for all the federal programs for tribes, including in areas of healthcare, housing, education, roads, job training, the environment, and support for tribal governmental operations, among many, many others. Restoring federal recognition will not be quick and it will not be easy, but I believe it is possible, and I am committed to helping the tribe do everything in its power to achieve it.
Thank you both very much, Shelly and Frank. So we want to make sure somewhere in here we get the update on where the process is, but also maybe name right away in this month in which we're looking at what it means to cultivate relationship, and in particular what it means to cultivate relationship in this context. For those of us who are part of the whiter community, wanting to be in the right relation, what does that look like? And I know you two have been working together and having a personal version of working together in this process. And I know you've had some conversation about what that's about and what that means and what the challenges are. I invite you to share if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, this is why relationship building is so important. And luckily, I enjoy meeting people and getting to know people. And it's so funny because my mom is always yelling at me because I never ask enough questions. Well, what do they do? You know, where do they work? Who do they know? And I'm like, I don't know, because I get stuck in the moment of just, you know, sitting and chatting and having a relationship building moment. But that's how we met Frank. And I know we satellited each other for a while. He was a member of UU, and someone had, you know, when you say you're a Native American tribe and you're looking for federal rec, everybody, I hope I'm not being disrespectful, but people are like, well, I know a lawyer that works with Native tribes, and as many times as that's been said, I guess because there's so much speciality, you know, in what that means, that it had never aligned with us, really. And so when I met Frank, I won't say I wasn't hopeful, because I'm always extremely hopeful, but I just, his experience and his knowledge base is huge. And I had also been working with someone else who I don't even remember how I met, who's works a lot in international humanities and is very interested in California terminated tribes. So I got the two of them together anyway, but all this came because of somebody knew somebody and they sent me an email somehow. And talk about relationship building and where you never know the help is going to come from, because there is no path. I mean, we've been doing this. We were in federal court for almost 8 years. We prepared for that. I think it was like 3 years in preparation for court that we were unsuccessful. And then a couple years after we lost, it was just like, you know, like, what are we going to do now? Do we pursue this? And we had thought at the time that our only way forward was legislation. So I met Frank and Brian, this other man that we're working with, and we've been talking about, like, what are the paths? And the other day, I know I'm talking a lot, but the other day they were actually back into law and legislation talking about the definition of Indian and tribe, and I was just like, oh no, like, where are we? You know, wait, what? Because that's how ridiculous it is sometimes. Frank, but, you know, and my burning question had been to Frank, you know, and we see each other almost every single Friday, and yet we're always working, so I don't get the chance to just, like, ask him random things. But my question to Frank had been, like, he works with federally recognized tribes, and we're the same, like some of the tribes in Orville. Like, I have cousins down there, and they're federally recognized and they have all this, their sovereignty, right? They have this power, they have this standing, they have a voice, and we're no different, except we seem to have hit a lot of, if you want to call it bad luck, like bad luck. So anyway, Frank and I were talking, and what did you read me, Frank? I mean, why did that blow my mind so hard? I was just like, what? Like, what you don't know, you don't know. Right.
Well, we were talking about the difference between being federally recognized and not federally recognized. And I had this thought, which is, you know, that federal law gets put into something called the United States Code, and they're printed in volumes, bound volumes, and they're referred to as titles. So Title 26, I think, is the Internal Revenue Code, and all the tax laws go there. Title 25 is called Indians, and there are federal laws dealing with Indian tribes and Indian people throughout all the federal law, but Title 25 is all federal Indian law.
I had no idea.
And the thought I had was just to give you a sense of the breadth of what it means to be federally recognized, was just to take a look at the table of contents, because, you know, this is what I do. I like to read and research. So what's the table of contents to Title 25 U.S. Code? There are 34 chapters, and that's what I read to you. And it gives you a little flavor. I won't go through all of them, but you know, Chapter 1, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Chapter 2, Officers of Indian Affairs, Chapter 2A, Indian Claims Commission, Agreements with Indians, Performance by the United States of Obligations to Indians, Chapter 6, Protection of Indians, Chapter 7, Government of Indian Country and Reservations, that was Chapter 6, Chapter 7, Education of Indians, Chapter 7A, Promotion of Social and Economic Welfare, Rights of Way through Indian Lands, Allotment of Indian Lands, Descent and Distribution, Heirs, Allottees, Irrigation of Allotted Lands is a whole chapter, Lease, Sale, or Surrender of Allotted or Unallotted Land. It goes on and on and on. Indian Child Welfare, Bureau of Indian Affairs Programs, Development of Tribal Mineral Resources. Each one of these is an entire chapter of federal law. It all applies to federally recognized tribes, and none of it applies to unrecognized tribes. So it's the most extreme case of the haves and the have-nots. It's a divide in Indian country across the nation, and it's so it legally it's everything. But as I said in my reflection, federal recognition will open up the world to the tribe in every possible area, from getting money through HUD to build homes, getting money through the BIA to build roads, getting, really important is grants to operate the tribal government. So then you have funding, then you can create a cultural resources department and hire someone who focuses on that. This is one of the things we were talking about. Shelly does everything with Ember's help. Ember's here today. And it's too much, I think.
It's a little bit of a lot. And what I was trying to tell Frank was, like, it's like I'm working on a little nonprofit. Like, you know, you squeeze a rag, like, what can you do? You know, we need housing, and then we need child welfare and all these things. I think I was lamenting about, like, most nonprofits have a very specific, you know, and ours is, I mean, it's good in some ways, but it's so wide. But I guess that's why when you read the different chapters of the Indian law, I was like, that's what, I didn't even know it existed, but I'm like, that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to mimic or replicate in some sad little, I mean, you know, we are a tiny nonprofit. And, but the thing that is just, like, I'm looking at my life, like, especially today on my birthday, I'm watching it, like, decade at a time, like, click, click, click by, doing this work. Like I was saying earlier, like I'm not the perfect person. If someone were to go choose, like, who can do all this stuff, it would not be me. And I was telling my mom the other day, like, if I'm the one telling somebody, God, you really should move a little bit, like, because I'm not the most out there exercising girl. So if I'm telling them, you better watch how you eat and you should move more, like, man, that's really getting down there, because I'm, you know, who am I to be telling anybody, because I don't do those things. And I feel the same way about this, is like, I feel like I'm, like, how is it me? And I'm trying to do it, but all this hardship, when the answer seems to be, like, just the unratified treaties in 1851, that was, like, they did treaties here and then literally hid them, and they were found in the Senate in, like, 1904 or 7 or something like that.
Yeah. Decades later.
That should be enough right there. Like, that's bad. And then the termination, you know, like, everybody else has been restored, why not us? That would be number 2. And then, I mean, just to get, you know, and that it's like, I'll fly out to Washington, D.C. and type our name on that list. What's the hard part? I mean, of course, it's politics and it's all this stuff you have to navigate. And
with that in mind, for people who care, what would support look like? And I mean that both in a general way and also in a specific way in this case. What can people do? What would support look like that would be genuinely desired and helpful?
If you personally know Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, and you want to talk up another executive order, that would be one thing. Who are the influences? Seriously, like when we got our Woodrow Wilson executive order, because the suffragette movement here was so big, and I heard that his wife was like totally into that, and she was out here. So I'm just like, how did that even happen? And there's always a way. Of course, donations to CHIRP is the direct stream into support.
And for those who don't know, that's the California Heritage Indigenous
Thank
Research
you.
Project.
I just think everybody knows everything weird thing that's in my head.
And it's a 501c3 nonprofit corporation that was formed by and for the tribe and run by the tribe, and its purposes are to promote the tribe's resurgence.
Our mission is preserve, protect, and perpetuate Nisenan culture. And we do have a brick and mortar space in Nevada City now, and I'm actually going to be doing some tours tomorrow between 1 and 12 and 6, something like that. If you go to our CHIRP site, you can find the information. But there's a lot happening. I know that people want to sometimes volunteer, and because I feel like sometimes that answer is really hard because I want people to help and we need help, and sometimes it's just I don't think our programs aren't in a way where I can, well, actually that's not true, because we have land and we're going to start doing cleanup days out there pretty soon, where people can literally come out and do something. It just seems like everything is so obscure that I'm not sure how. And ask Amber, I'm like, it's really hard with volunteers that if you have a specific skill set, please, or an idea, throw it at me. Like we are with the big catcher's mitt, and everybody, sometimes the ideas are where it's at, or who somebody knows, or an experience they had, or.
Can I, Shelly and Ember and I talked about this on our Friday call 2 days ago. And one of the things, I was asking the same question: how can we, UUCM congregation, be in right relations, supportive? What can we do? And there were a couple things that really jumped out at me from that conversation.
Yeah.
One was that you guys are planning kind of a public education campaign.
Yeah.
That you'll be rolling out, I think.
Yes.
I don't know the details
Building
of it.
curriculum. We're trying to get these things on the ground so that we can hand them to people. Yeah.
And it occurred to me that particularly for our task force, Carmen is here. One thing we could do is to become educated to the point where we're able to then do those trainings, those public education things. Because the other piece that really struck me from our conversation was how much Shelly is carrying. You use that image of carrying a bunch of firewood, And what I took away from our conversation Friday was that, you really, people look to Shelly to educate them. Tell us your story. Tell us the story of the tribe. Help us understand. Educate us. But we need to step up and do that for ourselves, because
and I know it's hard when, we're not you can't just go get a book and have it all laid out yet. We will someday, I think. So sometimes it is hard, but our social media, please go on our social media. It is really laid out there. Ember's been great about curating. We have a resource list where you get, it's so much of me yapping, but there's a lot of information there. There really is. And Richard's book, The History of Us. And the other thing is just to, be one of those folks that if somebody says, oh, there was no genocide here in California, educate yourself so you can go, not to fight or anything, but to say, actually, and here's the resources that prove that. I hear so much that the Indians are extinct, or they referred to us as a wrong name, we know who we are. Even just I like to say that even if if the only thing you do is just to say, oh, the Nisenan were here, pick up the land acknowledgement for your organizations. Those kind of things, I mean, spreading the word is, because we're all of us together, that's the only way we can undo that erasure.
I would like to ask one last question. Thank you for that. So financial support, educating ourselves, looking at ways we might help other people become more aware and educated. So I know so often those of us who are kind of steeped in white Western European cultures and upbringings are well-meaning, and even in that effort can often do things that are harmful or not welcome. Is there anything you would say about, in terms of cultivating relationship, that's mutual, that's respectful, that's right? Is there anything you feel drawn to say in terms of your experience, either of you actually, that would say, here's what helps, or this is what works, or maybe what doesn't work? What can we know so we can be best informed and do the least amount of harm possible?
I think one of the other things, and I think it's just, because I have all the patience in the world, and at least maybe I used to. Maybe it's age. I'm just getting cranky. But I think it's, too, I'm just a little bit tired. And, like, there's so much to do. And one of the things that I used to beat around the bush or try to be, I don't ever want to tell people, like, you're wrong. Like, that's not a good way to make a friendship, is to be like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, that's not helpful from me. But, I represent my entire tribe. And I am just now getting to the point where I can make decisions without getting everybody's approval of things, because I think I've been doing it long enough. I know more than most people, at least as far as we are concerned and what is going on. And I really don't like to be argued with about things sometimes that are extremely personal, like telling me what my people did, and I'll say, actually, that's not true, and then I get argued with. Granted, there are moments where I'm not saying I'm always right, but about that, what would be helpful is to not do that. If you're speaking to somebody and they're telling you, like, about their people, it's not even a disrespect thing. It's just like, and how do you know? Because the books are sometimes wrong. And I think that is one of the main things lately, because I didn't realize how it didn't bother me before. And because I would just sit and, talk, and I have a way of, it's just who I am. I'm like, well, I don't know about that, or my mom said, hopefully, dropping like subtle hints or whatever. And, but, at a certain point, because I've seen it happen to other tribal people and been witness to it, and maybe it's not until I can externalize it where I can go, that's not okay. That is, especially an elder, like, that is not okay. So please don't do that. All the advice, all the ideas, bring it. I love it. A change in my mind if you think I'm wrong, but don't tell me I'm wrong. And I don't like being talked over about people who read a book and they want to tell me what the people here did. Wow.
Thank you.
I feel lighter.
There you go.
Because I'm being frank, because, like, Frank's right beside me. Is that the new and improved Shelly or something? I don't know.
Shall we say yay and amen to that?
I don't know, hook Frank, you got keep him on my side all the time.
So,
way to be clear, right?
More to come. Clear. Thank you, Shelly, very much for bringing both your presence, but also your heart and genuine presence when you're here. That's such a gift, and
always.
We don't take it for
granted. I hope that doesn't go away with my getting all crabby and stuff.
And Frank, thank you. Thank you for being part of the conversation and the work. And to be continued. Everyone.
Woo! Yay! So excited.
UUCM partners with, whoops, I still have my mask on. UUCM partners with other organizations that are nonprofits in Nevada County that do an awful lot to further goals that are in line with our values. They do an awful lot for the people of Nevada County. One of those organizations is Habitat for Humanity. 25% of our offering this month will support Habitat for Humanity, which brings people together to build homes, communities, and hope. Habitat for Humanity envisions a community where everyone has the opportunity to have a safe, decent, affordable place to live. Since we are not passing a plate in person, giving in other ways is vital to our ability to sustain the work of our community. Thank you for your generosity. The next slide will show you how you can do that by text, PayPal, UUCM's website, or by mail.
Although we're not passing the basket in person, your generosity remains essential to our ability to sustain the work of our community. There are several ways to contribute. You may text an amount to 833-579-0483, give via our website at uugrassvalley.org, via PayPal at paypal.me/UUCM, or mail to UUCM 246 South Church Street, Grass Valley, California, 95945. Thank you.
Let us dedicate this offering to justice, equity, and compassion in human relations.
Many, many thank yous today. Thank you, Jeff, for being worship associate. Shelly, thank you so much again for bringing yourself. I'm thinking that message to be attentive to what we know or don't know is really good for us Unitarian Universalists. We like to be people in the know. Beth, thank you for being chat host behind the scenes so beautifully as always. Is actually Steve Temple, who is our audio host today. Thank you, Steve. Siobhan Boylan has been operating the AV today, doing a marvelous job. Shanti did the setting today, the beautiful setting. She included here a Chinese fan and a Hispanic covering on the table in front of the pulpit to bring in those other cultures, right, that are also relationships to be cultivated. Thanks to Jordan for the music today with Frank on guitar, and it was Jordan's birthday yesterday, so we have back-to-back birthdays. Happy birthday, Jordan. We're grateful for you. Thanks, Frank, for bringing your voice as well as your music. Holly and Carmen for offering your reading voices. And behind the scenes, George Dunstan and Corey Silva and Cheryl Morris.
And I would like to say one more thing. Today is Minister Appreciation Day, and so I want to say I appreciate, and we all appreciate, our minister, Reverend Kevin Tarsa.
Thank you, Jeff. So we're going to, Jordan and Shelly and I are going to sing together for the closing. Words that's a song that some of you will know from Mom Muse. We shall be known by the company we keep. And I would add, by how we keep that company. If this is a song you know, I invite you to sing along, or if you pick it up, feel free. And if you want to receive it and take it to heart, I invite you to do that too. So Shelly, I invite you to come on up, and we will.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves unto the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
My friends, each and every Sunday, we acknowledge that the Nisenan people are still here among us today, though they are nearly invisible and though their story continues to be excluded from history. We do so today, grateful for Shelly's generous and powerful willingness to be visible and to help us know more of the story that's been excluded. We do this every Sunday, speaking the words chosen by the people to whom those words refer. Not only in order to remind ourselves to notice and to learn and to act, but also in the very speaking, even in the repetition, without changing the words to make them our own, without taking over and colonizing that language, to practice honoring the will, the presence, the agency of the Nisenan so long nearly invisible. May that repetition find its way into and through and out of our hearts. May we be so. I invite you to join me in the community benediction, this way to remember that we are connected even now. As we extinguish the chalice together, let us carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. A couple of reminders that Monday, tomorrow, is the Women's Circle gathering. I invite you to check that out, especially if you're looking for connection. Entry Point is a chance for people to learn a little bit more about this congregation and about Unitarian Universalism. A one-session interactive get-together. I invite you to join us on Tuesday if that interests you. And the Pumpkin Patch continues with some creative art fun on Wednesday and an outdoor movie on the 30th. So I invite you to mark those on your calendars and plan to take part. We'll see you next Sunday, where we move the focus of relationship to our relationships with ourself. I hope to see you then.
And get ready, if you haven't already done so, you can turn your camera on at any time, and we'll be unmuting everyone shortly so you can say hello. You'll be invited to join a breakout room for conversation. I can help you get there, or you can do it yourself if you know how. You can stay in the large group or come back to it at any time. And here's a list of today's breakout rooms.